Okay. Last one, and we are ready to go. We're going off the order that was there, so I believe that is Aneesh, you first. So, Aneesh, tell me about the 5 things about KEON Johnson, and we can roll.
Yeah, so I think the first thing that pops up is his athleticism. He is an absolutely insane athlete, super quick and explosive leaper. And then when in the air, he's able to contort his body really well, and also able to stay in the air for a while, and then also has really, really good burst. The second one is his spatial awareness, proprioception, instincts, flexibility, fungibility, all that kind of stuff. And it's crazy because that's basically how he succeeded at Tennessee, with very little actual technical skill. And then third is his handle. That will be a swing skill for him. Defensive instincts. He's very instinctual, combined with his physical tools. And for someone who has his developmental arc, that's very positive. And then the fifth one is his developmental reach for Tennessee. I think we can all agree that it wasn't the greatest context for him in terms of his own personal development. And so just finding out how he can progress past that and kind of readjust.
Yeah, I think that you've hit it on the nail on the head. I mean, that context one is one that we've touched on a lot with Tennessee previously. But yeah, let me know what jumps out to you. And my mic's sounding good now, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So again, just the normal way. 1 time regular speed, 1 time double speed.
The first one is a very standard play that you see at Tennessee. He comes off and attacks the basket really aggressively and has a sort of an advantage, but instead of keeping on using that advantage, he feels a little bit of pressure from, I'm pretty sure that's Drew Smith, and it was part of that, and maybe even his handle a little bit. He kind of stops and has a turnaround jumper. And I think a big thing with him is not only developing the handle where he can feel comfortable with like a little hang, dribble, hezzy, whatever you want to do, and also just not fading back, because you have that athletic profile and you have a slight advantage and just capitalizing it and going all the way to the rim and finishing using your physical tools for that.
Yeah, and what do you make of his physical tools, like in context of like, do you think that he has some of the better physical tools relative to skill set? Like, obviously he's profiled as sort of a creator or secondary creator. I think KEON's athleticism is something that's like often talked about, but not really contextualized as much.
So I think his athleticism profiles best in terms of an off-ball wing, because it's so sudden and it's so powerful that it's hard to honestly control. And like, even if he improves on it, it's much better for like, it's much better in an off-ball context. Assuming where there's less like counters to your game, where you have to like change angles, change directions with the ball in your hands, all that kind of stuff. And I think that also helps, because I at least from the film that I saw this past year, he seems to be more of an off-ball wing kind of guy.
Yeah, I just wanted to, that's been a developing narrative as the year's gone
on. Yeah. This is the next clip, I think. Basically the same thing again. I just wanted to highlight how often it happens, how often this happens, where instead of getting all the way, instead of getting all the way to the rim, he's settling a lot for those turnaround jumpers, and in this case, like a little bit of a half spin. And once again, I just wanted to show that like these need to change in terms of developing into a quick decision maker, quick player attacking off of the more primary creators. If that makes sense. And even though he made it, I think it was a good play for him. because he did create the separation off the turnaround. But yeah, that just need to not rely so much on the post up kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's like the post up being a 2-foot guard creator is really difficult, and being that in turn of a guy who has a developing handle and a developing jumper makes for an exciting but also somewhat fraught developmental context. And like that developmental context at Tennessee was helped in some ways. I mean, I think that like spacing is obviously a part of it, but it's not the whole part. Like, developmental context can include developmental plans, can include shooting development, like the soft things that aren't games. So I think a lot of this is interesting, and we won't really know how Tennessee impacted these guys for at least a couple of years, beyond the fact that there's some rough screen caps. Anyway, I'll let you jump back in. Sorry for.
Yeah, so this next play, I thought it was interesting because he's off ball and he seems to be like understanding that he should be like shading a bit down on Tillman, but is almost trying to trick the defense into making that pass because I think he does understand that he has those athletic tools where once he sees that pass about to be made, he has the ability to basically snatch that or deflect it or whatever you want to do. And I think that's obviously I don't want to say what's in his brain because I don't know what he was thinking for sure, but I think that's a very advanced kind of idea to have, and kind of trying to play mind games with the offense in this case.
Yeah. What do you see as his defensive archetype? Like, who is his ideal coverage?
I think he's one of two things. I think he's either a point of attack guy, like guarding guard creators kind of guy, and just being like an absolute havoc dude because he'll bite on some stuff and everything, but like his size and his movement capabilities and athletic profile and ability to get over screens and everything like that, like going to be trouble for some of those guys. And then I think the other one is as well as the recovery tools. And the other one is just like a havoc creator off ball, just like have him fly all over the place. And I don't want to, the first guy that popped into my head just now, I'm not going to say the one-to-one comparison. It's kind of like DeJounte, where it's like, yeah, he's a havoc creator, but then on ball, he can, just because of how disruptive he is, he's going to miss sometimes, but also the sheer amount of activity and recovery and athletic tools make so hard to play against.
Yeah. I mean, I think that there's multiple pathways for KEON to succeed, and saying that like shooting is the swing skill is kind of myopic, because like for his primary hood, yes, but not necessarily for the other ways he could be successful.
Yeah, and that's a big reason why I didn't include it, because I that's not going to be the reason he sticks or not in the NBA. That's good. That's more of like a ceiling raiser, in my opinion. Yeah. And in my opinion, the primary or secondary creator kind of tag is a little bit unrealistic. So I think it's more important to focus on the other aspects of this game.
Absolutely.
So this next clip is him coming off and going for a lob, and you see all those absolutely nutty vertical traits, but it's a bad lob thrown by Vescovi. And then you're just going to see, it's a clip of solid nail help, and then just a bunch of good team defense plays where he kind of makes the Missouri offense second guess themselves and maybe hesitate and all that kind of stuff, and is not only taking away advantages, but also preventing potential advantages as well. And that's like, for someone who is billed as a havoc guy, he has these flashes, and like a havoc guy who's pretty early in his basketball development context, having these flashes is important and shows with a little bit more consistency, which again, he's pretty early in his development, how valuable that could be on defense.
Yeah, I mean, and you can also see that like I don't want to say he's rough around the edges, but like that his context didn't exactly put him in circumstances where like he had a ton of opportunity to make mistakes. Like that pass wasn't something he got to make 10 times a game. It happened once or twice. Like, and I think that's when we talk about like developmental context, is like how many of those reps happen in practice. Sorry, JoJo has decided it's now attention time. How many times those happen in practice, how those reps are developed, are as important as what we see in games, but we don't necessarily get a great picture of it. So, developmental context has, much more. There we go. Oh, misses the layup. Yeah, this is the stuff I think that you probably picture as for his rookie deal, right? Where he initiates a little bit, but he's also getting reps off ball and with cutting.
Yeah. I just thought, number one, I first thought it was interesting that he was the one getting back up. He seemed to be the one bringing up the ball, or not he seemed to be. He was the one bringing up the ball when Vescovi wasn't on the court, which I thought was interesting given that he played with Springer, I want to say, good 75% of the time. But yeah, no, I agree. I think it's a night. His offensive role is like a mix of advantage stuff but also some self creation because of how much he can generate with his burst and vertical explosion, just the ability to get downhill. I'm assuming just on so many NBA players, because I don't think that athleticism is going to be stunted that much.
No, he can also fly. Just like that. That is pretty crazy speed. Like a lot of times I feel like we can brush over how crazy some individual aspects of KEON's athleticism are. Just in the conversation, because like it pretty quickly devolves into like if he shoots, which is kind of a boring conversation. Instead of being like, wow, there's like his short space to close down some of these angles is pretty nuts. And then when you let him in the open court, like, yeah. A lot of stuff, a lot of really interesting combinations. Do you feel like he's a guy who would benefit from falling in that way, where he would probably go to a context that would want him to be a secondary more because they're most likely a better team?
Oh yeah, I don't even think he should be like a secondary. I think he should be like a mostly off-ball player to start with, and then if he does get creation reps, it's in something like the G League or blowout stuff or whatever. I don't think you should be giving him reps in meaningful minutes to start out with.
Yeah.
Like I know everyone talks about Denver. They're like they've turned it to like one of the perfect contexts. But obviously he works perfect in Denver.
Yeah, I mean I think that Denver probably, I don't know if like they need so much wing help just for defenders, and I don't know if that's necessarily his profile. Like for the exact thing they're looking for. I feel like I like KEON more on smalls. But there's certain.
I think I'd be kind of interested, at least personally, in having kind of like Murray play off the ball on defense and then have KEON guard point guards.
Yep, that's what I was thinking too. I just don't like. Okay, I don't want to say trust, but like Aaron Gordon to me is not the wing stopper that they've sort of fantasized about for like a decade since Iguodala left. And like,
and whether I agree with you or not. Oh, sorry to interrupt. Whether I agree with you or not, I think it's, at least in my opinion, I feel like it's pretty clear that none of the rookies are going to take that spot away from Gordon. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh, 100%. Especially for like real serious deep playoff minutes. The precedent for that is basically like Magic Johnson.
Yeah. So that's kind of why I'm like, why I think like KEON, like I don't think he'll fall there. I'll be honest, I haven't really looked at like consensus and big name draft boards too much, but yeah, I don't really see that. I don't see him falling, but if he gets there, I think that's a potentially really good fit.
Yeah. I feel like KEON might be one of the most flattened prospects in terms of how discussions about him go. Does anybody have an angle that you feel like wasn't pursued, or a particular fit that jumps out to you? I mean, regardless of how likely it is, again, I assume everyone is going to be trying to trade, and that we're going to see more things like what happened with New Orleans and Memphis than we are going to see like the order go chalk.
With KEON, do you think that basically that giving him reps, like even if it's like, let's say you say, all right, instead of like, let's say he's capable of being just like a guard stopper as a rookie right away and getting minutes right away, do you think that it would actually be better for him to go to the G League and say, all right, you're running the offense, and we're going to see how much we can develop that handle and that passing to like more passable levels? So like even if he could get minutes right away in a different role and be valuable, possibly, like it depends on characteristics, of course. Do you think that taking the time saying, hey, we're going to go long term rather than trying to fit you in short term would be better.
I think the long-term play, just given his development arc,
Mm.
like just taking it as safe as possible and trying to slowly package on skills is the better route. Like there's possibilities that he could like be, get short-term returns from that, in my opinion. But I also think that it's more likely that like those short-term returns do not meet up at the head with the long-term returns, that they're sort of somewhat mutually exclusive, unless you assume that he has like really strong latent shoot development, then you can sort of bridge that gap.
Mm.
Yeah, no, I think it would be interesting to see him kind of do both. Honestly, like I don't NBA teams usually different than most of the people I talk to, but I don't see why not. You could have him come in like half the season where he's doing the mostly off-ball stuff, but then also put him in for the I forgot how many games the G League season is, and just let him run and figure it out.
Yep. All right. Any thoughts on any additional thoughts on KEON? I feel like.
Do you feel more enthused about KEON now or halfway through the season? Not the beginning of the season, but halfway through the season.
I feel like the draft order made me less enthused.
Mm.
He might be one of the losers of the draft order. But I don't. That doesn't have to do with him. That just has to do with like value and organizational alignment. Any disagreements there?
No,
maybe
I would agree with that.
Like a touch lower, but nothing crazy.
Okay. Okay. I think next is Jalen Johnson.
Mm-hmm.
We get to move on.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Okay. So, tell me the 5 things about Jalen Johnson.
All right. So I'll say with Jalen Johnson is kind of basically like how, like this kind of, if you're a Jalen Johnson truther, you're probably likely to say, oh well, he's so big, he's so athletic, he's such a good passer, all those things. And if you're negative on him, you're actually probably liable to say, oh, he's actually not that athletic. Oh, he's actually not that big. And oh, he's actually not that good of a passer, on top of like, the shooting woes and the effort woes. And a lot of it is just kind of like, it depends on the situation. So that's my thing. It's just like with athleticism, with passing, with even shooting, I'll even say with the motor, it kind of all is situational. And I feel like, of course, I'm more, if somebody's talking to me, I'm more positive. And in terms of how many situations his athleticism, his passing, his motor, even slightly with shooting is probably more situations than consensus are favorable for your Jalen. But it is kind of like a tale of depends on the situation with him. He's I do really believe that like he's a great athlete, but it's great at certain things, and there are key parts he's lacking that do hold him back. And otherwise, like if he was like a uniform, if he was the same level athlete to me, but he switched around, like let's say his ability to like run fast, like if he slowed down like a little bit in transition or something like that, but had a more of like a better first step, like I think like he automatically like rises like at least 7 spots in most people's minds, if not more. So it's like the trade-offs in terms of athleticism kind of hold him back in certain ways, but he's also great in other ways. Same thing with the passing. He's great at passing in certain ways I think that are very valuable, but it's not like a universal genius like Jokic or something like that. Yeah, yes, he does have blind spots. So we can go into that, but I think that's the interesting part about Jalen. Like he has like the thing he's good at, he's like I think some of the best of the last few drafts at least. At the things he's really good at, but he just has his own drawbacks.
All right, we have Duke, North Carolina.
Yeah. So on this play, if we rewind, this was really important to me because a lot of times the main drawback with Jalen Johnson is that his first step doesn't really get past defenders. He has a great handle. I'll be lauding his handle all the time. I think he's one of the best of 6'8" plus prospect in a long while. He's so fluid with it, but he can't get the actual first step, so it usually just ends up with a wall up. However, if he's in transition, he then gets the room to actually just barge through. And that's a major difference in how he can operate. And once he gets the defense actually collapsing, every single decision is easy for him. He's automatic in terms of 2-on-1s, 3-on-2s, anything like that. He can automatically make the right decision. With that previous play before, it was more about him like being reticent to shoot a jumper. Like he makes a great move, but he can't shoot a jumper. In this one, he does go right into the jumper. You can see the pull up shooting. With the pull up shooting, it's a very, very different shot than his normal set shot when he's taking a spot up. I think it looks better than his set shot, but he has huge hands, so it's really hard for him to like hold the ball, I think. But again, you see instances where he just gets walled up. I think he's actually much better against smaller defenders, even though he has that size and handle. And you would think that he would be better against bigs, but he's really good at using his strength to put guard space. But if he doesn't have the strength advantage, he gets walled up easily, and he often has no room to go. Here, I think on defensively, the main issue people have with his like motor stuff, I think a lot of times it's just that he doesn't keep his head on a swivel, but he has such great like body control, and it's like he's able to really impact shots smartly when he does get in position. But it's just that he doesn't have he doesn't have to keep his head on the swivel all the time. He's smart. Once he sees a play, he'll react right away, but he doesn't have the body control to he doesn't have the head on the swivel, I should say, to really always update his processing. But if he does, then he can make a play like that where he's just swatting the ball and going in the transition in a clutch moment too. But also the parts with the ball is also that he kind of sometimes treats plays like, oh, you should have that. It's kind of a weird thing where like on defense he'll kind of not help right away because he assumes that you automatically are going to get to have that protected, so he doesn't really have to help. So he'll help late, or he'll help like unenthusiastic because he seems like he's kind of upset that you didn't get that on your own, which he does have to clean up. Here it was more about like how he gets walled off and he kind of misses opportunities to possibly like get a goal up with his left. He'd stop very comfortable with his left at all, but he does have he's very poised when he's off the dribble, and he's able to find open man. And I should also note that like he doesn't run pick and roll often, but I think he could do much more because of how poised he is. Like his 6'8" handle is really special for me. Like he may not always hit the read, but like that Kai Jones, I don't think could do that off the dribble. Even Trey Mann, I don't think he's as comfortable just like dealing with traps off the dribble as Jalen Johnson is, despite him having his own special handle in his own unique way. And I think also like in terms of the motor, like he does have a lot of effort plays. Like he's active on offensive rebounds, and he does really do well in looking for space to give his teammates an outlet passing plays. He does really good just to keep constantly moving to make sure he gives his trap teammate a space to look, and he's able to. Then in this case, his post game is kind of hit or miss. Like a lot of times he's not very good with attention to detail. So sometimes he'll do a move sloppily, but when he really gets it going, it looks beautiful. So it's really just about the attention to detail that he often lacks. And with a defensive rotation there, it's kind of more about him like not really having the athleticism that could just cover ground in an instant. So he really has to be early on a lot of rotations, which not sometimes he's less want to do. Sometimes he is, because his left is good, but it's not like center good. It's not 7'4", it's 7 feet. So with him with Jalen Johnson, it's basically that a lot of these traits, they're very situational. But I think the thing is, like, he's really special when he gets in the right situation. Like, that's a really accurate pass that he makes even in a very, very tight window. Of course, it got bobbled, but it's a really accurate pass, and he's really, really good at finding space on his own, and that he shows a spot-up jumper that his spot-up jumpers often look a little bit different, but he kind of, I'll say he kind of shares a lot of traits with Josh Christopher in terms of his spot shooting. He, in terms of like he kind of misaligns his ball raise, and he also kind of does the same thing with his right leg in terms of being more on the toe. So I think it's not awful, but it is an issue because it's not always consistent, and it does have weirdest aspects to it.
Can I ask a question I've been struggling with a lot with him?
Yeah.
If you could draft him anywhere for the first 3 years of his deal, where's the best place to do it?
I do want to think about that.
Is it more about coach? Like, because I don't think that, like, I've struggled to find an answer. Like, I feel like I've come up with like some good, like ideas, but I've never really like latched onto anything of like, oh yeah, that's the best possible solution for, I think the biggest issue that I keep coming back to is I don't have a good read on Jalen Johnson. And I think it's almost impossible to have a good read on Jalen Johnson.
Yes, I think that's very understandable in terms of and I think because of that, a lot of people end up on the pessimistic side, because if you don't feel confident about something, it's hard to be go fully with somebody. So
yeah, it leads me to be like not less pessimistic, but less optimistic about my ability to accurately troubleshoot like what the order of operations for problems is. So like because my tape is pretty much limited to his junior UIBL season, his sophomore UIBL season, or his sophomore high school season. I forget if he played UIBL when I was a sophomore. A little bit of Nicolette as a junior, that like the stuff that is against higher comp, and a little bit as a senior, and then 13 games at Duke. Like that's just so much a smaller sample than almost anybody in this class. And none of it comes without like I never felt like I was looking at the Jalen Johnson. I was looking at a version of him, and that's where I struggle with to be like, oh, this is the best fit. So like I feel like I could go to legacy organizations that I just like trust inherently. But I feel like that's a cop out. Like intellectually, I feel like I'm copping out. Not that that's not the right answer. I've struggled with that a lot. And since you put in a bunch of thought on this, I would just love to hear who you think if you had to.
Instinctively, I like one that came to mind is I think he'd be very good on the Celtics. I think the one issue. Oh, like there would be one issue, which is basically that like the two Jays, like they have their own issues in terms of like it's not over every single play they could always create an advantage. And if I say there's one thing that's probably the issue with Jalen Johnson right now, is just about that, like because his first step is often lacking. He has to be in the spots that created that kind of. He's really aggressive when he has an opening and sees in it, but he needs the opening first. So hopefully with Udoka in there'll be more situations where they get him. If he's in an off-ball setting, like he's really, really great at attacking closeouts, I feel, because like as long as he can get a step on you, like you often, like if you have even if you have a somewhat bigger player on him, he's strong enough to actually hold his position. Like he might not push him out the way, but you'll be able to hold the advantage. And once he is able to hold the advantage, then everything becomes so much clearer for him. So I feel like a team that doesn't have to always just like load up usage, because a lot of times what I would do is like they'll just run horns or something like that, or get as many delay type setups with him on the top of the key, and then they'll just say, all right, we have the floor space out for you, go break down your man. And that kind of didn't work for Jalen because he can't really break down his man that easily. Like the best he could do is if is push him around, and then get like a small, short mid range look or something like that, or post up, or or use the gravity that's probably unwarranted to pass people open. But he's not an advantage creator in that way. But he is like dominant sometimes when he does have an advantage open for him, and he could just exploit it because he's really good. Like during the game, the UFC game, you'll see times where he like misses some reads. But a lot of times, again, it's with the attention to detail part where he doesn't always keep his head in his swivel. But again, if he sees a play happening and it becomes very clear for him with this decision, he's able to say, oh, if one person is coming towards me, there's another player who's must be open. Let me pass the open person. So like, as he has to see that somebody's coming towards him. Of course, he doesn't like have a pretty natural like sense that, oh, if I know automatically that somebody's gonna be cutting here, so I'll throw him open. He has to scan. Like that's why he likes doing those jump passes often as well, because he gets more time to scan that way. Because he's a really good leaper when he leads. He does often not get burned as much as you would think by jump passing. But I think something like the Celtics, where he would have players who don't need to rely on him all the time, but he does supplement them greatly with his passing, with his transition play, with his poise, with the ball in the hands, and also being athletically viable on defense. Like he didn't really have to go on the perimeter as much as many would probably assume on defense in Duke. Like a lot of times they'll actually put him in drop, or if they have him at the screen, it would not be like they're not call for too many switches or something like that. But I do trust him mobility. His mobility defensively is not elite, but I think he's very good. So with all that, I think that's just a lot of really enticing skills that even if he is not that great of a shooter, like he has to shoot a little bit, but not. I don't think he has to be amazing. It's just like he needs situations where he has advantages open for him.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Any questions on Jalen Johnson? Any thoughts on Jalen Johnson? I mean, like to me, this is my weakest spot in the draft. I would have probably taken him number 2 last year because he was age eligible. Just because the gamble was worth it now. I don't know where my floor and ceiling would be on a trade up, trade down forward. That's a struggle. I don't really have an answer. Anybody have any insights they feel like they've come to?
Yeah, and also I do think also that one other thing is also, like, because Duke actually put the ball in his hands like a lot. I do think there's also some missed opportunities. Like you saw, he's a good cutter, as Mindy as Mo mentioned throughout the year. But I think he's also be a really good role threat. Like he has that load time issue, but he does get high. He does have amazing body control, and he's able to scan the floor on the move. So him in the roll situation is also very enticing to me more often in the NBA.
Yeah, I mean that makes sense to me. I feel like I really enjoy when I have a clear answer, and this one's just not that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the issue. Is like nobody feels confident, especially like even the off-court things. Like it's murky for a lot of people. So nobody has a clear chance of confidently say, "Oh, I know that this is going to progress," or I know that you can put him in. You can always rely on this skill. Like I think he has reliable skills. I should say, but nobody's able to coalesce like this. All these skills go easily into one role. Like he has a skill but he's lacking in another skill that makes a role like hit and miss depending on the situation sometimes.
Yeah, I mean,
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, I'm with you guys on the overall kind of not knowing what to do with Jalen Johnson. But I will say, if you are somebody who sees like murkiness and projection as an opportunity to like get a steal, especially in terms of like the economic resources or the draft resources required to obtain Jalen Johnson, this is going to be something where I think organizations are going to feel okay, more or less, depending on their ideas around personality risk. Not that I necessarily buy into that stuff, but I think if you take a swing on him outside the top 10, like you're either going to feel okay on swinging on like what you saw before once it gets that late in the draft, or he's going to hit and you're going to feel great about it. So I've seen him get faded as far as like late first round, and I can't get there myself just because we don't have the answers that we wish we had, but there's so much good stuff on tape through the sample he has shown that at some point you got to take the swing.
Yeah, I'm somebody who's like I think his special skills are special enough that I'm willing to take the swing much higher. Like I'd have him like I think 6 or something, which is much higher than one the league is on, and most people who are doing evaluating. Many people also doing this very sensibly, of course, because there are the risks. But I think like his handle for his size is special. I think his body control and his hands, like he measured with the biggest hands in the combine. Like his hands are huge, and it does functionally allow him to do things with the ball in terms of more passing angles or reactiveness that other players can't with the ball. So I think with that and him being functional athletically in many other cases and being able to pass, it's worth the swing that as long as you are smart and very considered strongly what he would do once he gets to your team. You can't just throw him off your team. You have to have a plan.
Yeah, and that's where the difficulty is like, what exactly is the plan? Because what are you planning off of? And everything is really murky, just all across the board. Like it's I can't remember the last prospect that was like this for me, where like I just didn't know how much I knew to be true.
Just real quick, I think me and friends have talked about this privately, but like I'm a little bit lower on Johnson. But I think from a pure talent perspective, it's like even for someone lower on him, it's really hard to see him falling out, like being outside the top 20. Like it would be an absolute steal if you can get him like after 18 or something. Like even post lottery, it's like a pretty good. Pretty good get, but especially like after you get past like OKC and stuff like that, I think it's really a good bet.
Because also, Jalen kind of also fits the case, like if somebody wants to go where like he has a lot of things wrong with him, but if one thing makes an outlier leap into being good or passable, then he looks much different as a player overall. So it's like a lot of holes in the game. Like one hole gets filled, then all of a sudden, like he has much more certainty in a certain way he can play, and that unlocks a lot for
him. Yeah, that's certainly. I feel like that's you've hit the nail on the head in I think the most succinct way possible. Does anybody have any final Jalen Johnson things before we move on to AO? All right. Hit me with the 5 central concepts of AO DOSUNMU.
All right. So the 5 central concepts to me, I kind of break them down into 2 offensive concepts, 1 kind of hybrid concept that affects both sides of the ball, and then 2 mostly defensive concepts. So the first one, especially for the offensive category, would be, do you see IO as a primary or a connector? And I think this is kind of the general thesis of what we're going to go through here in these clips, because I think depending on how you answer that question personally, will decide where you place IO on your board or how you value him in this draft. The second one I titled Vision Quest. Can he see the floor like a primary, and or how long will it take him to get there, and or how far has he come already? The third one is contextualization. and this is the kind of the hybrid one. Depending on how you answer that first question and how you will answer point 5, I think you will have what surmounts to a reasonable plan for how you would contextualize IO. We've got some clips to kind of show that off. And then number 4 is when mirroring goes wrong. That one will explain itself in some of the clips we've got. And the last one, kind of how you see him as a defender. Where does he stake his claim as a defender? And I think specifically I'm looking at kind of on or off ball.
Okay. Which one of those feels the most fraught to you?
I think, that's actually a tough one, because I think you could, my first inclination is to say primary or connector, but I actually think I have a pretty solid opinion on that one. Where he stakes his claim off ball could depend, or on or off ball defensively, depends on some changes to his tendencies and also some changes to his kind of approach and his process in how he defends. So actually, I think it might be kind of like what his defensive role is. I would say is the most fraught. The offensive stuff for me, more or less, is I feel pretty good about.
All right. Well, with that, let's all jump in.
Okay, so I specifically sent this clip to PD, and it's like the second or third possession of the game, I think. I titled this one 2K defense, because this reminds me of like when you're playing a guard in my career, and you're just trying not to get teammate ranking degradation. So you're following your man around like nobody's business, and you do not care what happens off ball because it's not gonna be on your neck. But IO doesn't really like process kind of what's going on around him there. Doesn't keep his head on a swivel, and the action is run specifically to target him. So that does not work so well for the Illini in this possession. And this is kind of where some of the off-ball question marks start to rear their heads a little bit, I think. And then we've got a clip here that speaks to the first point, the primary or connector point. And so IO sees the skip pass on the corner and he hits it. And I think it's a pretty good pass. The play kind of dies there for whatever reason, and IO gets the ball back at the top of the key. And it's his turn to kind of do something, make something happen off the dribble. And I think you start to see some of where the handle falls apart. He's generally a pretty physical player. He's strong, he's long, and he wants to get to the rim. The free throw rate ticked up this year, as it has done every year of his college career so far. But the handle lets him down sometimes. And I think sometimes that's something you see with those longer wingspan guys, but especially IO, who I think does an okay job getting low, but doesn't always kind of keep the ball on a string. He can tend to handle a little high. And so the handle is a question mark for me in terms of his potential stock as a primary. But on the contextualization point, you see here, like when he's got Curbelo in the lineup with him, everything makes a little more sense, and the roles kind of click in a little bit better. So Andre Curbelo is a really high level orchestrator of half court offense. He's a creative genius. That he possesses kind of a perspective on the court that IO doesn't have, and they cover each other's weaknesses really well because IO is a big guard and he can handle the tougher defensive assignment more often than not. Yeah, and you've got another clip here. So like this is a proper kind of roster context for IO, but he gives up kind of the first step a little bit too easily there. Doesn't contain, even though I think he could have been in position to do so. He gives up the angle a little bit, and giving up that ball pressure isn't going to work if you see him as kind of an on-ball defender more often than not. But the next clip that we saw where he gets the run out in transition, IO likes to gamble for steals, and he's got that really long wingspan, so it more often than not works for him, I think. And this is a really great way for him to kind of get transition runouts, and he's amazing in transition. Like none of the half court kind of playmaking concerns apply when you look at watching him play in transition. So this is where my perspective in terms of how I would deploy him as a defender, I think I would deploy him more off ball, because I think there's some low hanging fruit to clean up in terms of like his tendency to gamble, but it gets him going downhill. It gets him running in transition in a way that works to his strengths. And you can keep him on court to figure out kind of some secondary playmaking and stuff like that later on.
Yeah, that's definitely like, I think that his college usage is informative, and instead of having like a floor general point guard, it's probably more likely that it's going to be a big wing. And that I think that one of the benefits of second unit of like scoring guards, or like, combo guards scoring wings, is that they can be scaled down by like naturally by going to the bench in a way that like basically every other role can't be. So it's possible to like basically do the same thing and get real results without only changing the defenses you face. And like that's a +1 perk to scorers that no other real archetype gets. Like it's harder to run. Like I guess like some point guards run second units. They just don't have the juice to do it against first. But that's not necessarily like a winning archetype. That's more of like a not losing archetype. If that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I definitely think so. It's something I see as more of a floor raiser. But if that's how you want to kind of buffer Io early on, and you kind of believe in the rest to come along as maybe a higher level connector in some lineups, where he can also kind of fulfill that 6-man or bench scorer responsibility in different contexts too, this is something that I think works to his advantage, just because there are a number of feasible ways in which you can deploy him, and some of those ways will help him kind of cover for his weaknesses early on, which is something I always look for in these developmental cases. Now, I was a little older. He's a junior, just finished his junior year. So, you are giving up a couple years of NBA development when you draft Io, since some of the college work has been done. But it's still, I think, a bet I'd be willing to take in the range that he's projected.
Yeah, I mean, that range is pretty wide. I mean, I've talked to people.
It is pretty wide.
I mean, like, granted, that's most people in this draft. They're like, yeah, I see him as a 20 to 40. It's like, okay, so that's probably like 40 people in this draft. But like, I like, there are people who really believe him to be like a fringe lottery guy. Like, probably not going 14, but like that, like they believe that they can return the value to make like 16 or 19 or 20. Like I guess what we would now consider like the Cam Thomas range. Like that, there are people who talk about him in sort of not the same value proposition, because I think AO offers a little more passing ideas and like, is a connector in a way that like Cam is a play finisher, but it's sort of the same like usage module, just like tinker it a little bit.
Yeah. Yep. I think so. And like, there are a couple guys in this draft class that I think are similar. They're different versions of a similar bet, kind of like you talked about in terms of that bench scorer profile and perhaps what that could evolve into if they can anchor themselves in that role early on, especially like for a bad team, I would say, where maybe staking that claim is a little bit easier. But I think there are less question marks about Io defensively than a lot of those other guys. He has a size profile that will be helpful for him, because you can feasibly see him as a 3 in some lineups if you're willing to play a little bit smaller. And so I think there's just kind of a little bit more innate creativity to how coaches might be willing to or interested in deploying him early on if their GM drafts him. Whereas with a Cam Thomas, like I feel like you can get boxed in a little bit in how you see him deployed, or at least I do personally.
Yeah, I think that's a legitimate problem. I think that like Cam Thomas is, I don't want to say known quantity, but like Cam Thomas has a thing that is scalable, and it's scalable in like a team building sense, where IO has a player development and archetype model that like is horizontal and could move a number of different directions, where Cam's is much more vertical. Sorry to get into tabletop RPG talk. But this is what happens when you're going on many hours of talking about basketball. You're going to start to get into really nerdy stuff. Is there anyone who would? Is there any team that you think I would assume would make sense above pick 20, even if they don't
pick 20?
Yeah, even if they don't currently have a 20 pick.
No, I don't think so. Because so basically I feel comfortable taking that question as, is there anybody currently slated to draft 20 or earlier who would take IO? Because if you don't have a pick currently higher than 20, I do not think it would be a good value proposition to trade up to get there to take IO. If only because like there's a possibility that Sharif Cooper is available at 20. I would rather take that bet. But I do think there are teams in kind of that range that might be a good fit for him. Just not teams that could or should realistically take him there.
Yeah, I struggle with the name. Not in the sense like with Jalen Johnson where there's not a 1-to-1 fit. It's that like many of the fits, I think that because there's a double coincidence of wants thing, like many of the bets I like another guy better in that same archetype. And it's like, oh yeah, like I could potentially see, like the Hawks making sense. I'm like, well, wouldn't you just want Cam? And I'm like, yeah, kind of. And it's just then he wouldn't just be if you had to order my picks, he wouldn't be first.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing. Like always the bridesmaid, never the bride in his archetype, his range. Just because that is, I guess, the benefit of having like what you might consider to be a bankable skill in a draft prospect. Like Cam Thomas is going to get buckets. So if you just need buckets, like if you need somebody who can deputize bench units and put up points in the regular season and give Trae Young a break, like I'm taking Cam Thomas probably. If you are willing to do the intellectual dirty work and think about what your plan would look like for Io and how he could potentially fit both as a third guard and as somebody who you could deploy alongside Trae Young in different looks, like then I'm interested in taking Io. But that one is probably for me, like I think I would take Io there over Cam Thomas, for example. But like that just shows kind of how late you have to get in the draft order before that calculus becomes feasible for a team, or at least for me.
Any disagreements?
Not particularly. I do want to also mention that fact that like I do think like Kofi Coburn has kind of been almost like a meme in terms of like how his college value is so much different from his NBA value. But I do think he really helped as a development in terms of like I think just because he's so huge, like I've read like Io has been more encouraged in terms of looking for roll man passes and stuff like that, or entry passes, and I think that has kind of helped him in general, just like expand his development. Besides, all right, let me just develop how to get into my elbow jumper repeatedly and score that way, or how many different ways can I get into the paint without having to do too many dribble moves. So I think because like stuff like that is kind of the added value that I think that will really make or break him as like archetype versus just any other guard. Is the fact that if he could do more ancillary things rather than saying, hey, I could score and also defend and I have some size. Because even though it's valuable, there's a lot of players that could kind of do that.
Yeah, Kofi made a huge difference. Like if you look at even what Io's freshman year looked like compared to when Kofi came in his sophomore year, the post-entry pass is a thing that really matters. Like having a pressure release valve for when a known pressure release valve that you really kind of don't have to think or look too hard for, because Kofi is like so obvious and in the college game. Mm-hmm. That bailout option, that kind of pressure release valve was critical for him, and to encourage him to I guess kind of diversify his usage, especially as a passer, and find a big man more often. That's something that was both valuable for his scoring efficiency and having somebody else to share that kind of pressure with him, and also like for his decision-making process in half court, because he had checkdowns, I guess I would call them. Whereas before it was kind of like, okay, your check down if you can't get an early shot clock look is like, get into your process and get to your mid-range elbow jumper, essentially, like you were talking.
Like there were several times where it looked like no matter as long as you put it within like this a 10 to 15 foot radius of Kobe, he could catch the ball because he was so strong. He could carve that space. So like I think it's like if he was like in another offense that was I don't know what type of like offense. Like even if it's an offense that was just more like, okay, you're the best athlete on the court. Just drive every single time. You have like a 35 usage. Just keep it going. I think he does end up a lot worse just because I think he just the habits that right now that seem like more questionable about him. I think just become even more stark negatives.
Yeah, or at least on offense for sure. Like I would definitely agree with that.
Yeah, just want to say that.
Yeah, I also agree with most of what Francis said. Just him working more on developing those ancillary things, because I don't think he's ever going to be ever tasked. Like there's always going to be players who are better creators, better scorers, better facilitators than him. So I think being able to do that in a pinch, but then also being able to cut and all that kind of stuff, all that good stuff that we all know, is going to be imperative for him.
All right, we get to move on to the one and only Jeremiah Robinson-Earl.
Let's do it.
Okay. So, Stone Hansen, tell me the 5 central concepts about Jeremiah Robinson-Earl, who I was too tired to write his full name, so I just wrote JRE.
Yeah, that's okay. That's pretty much how I always talk about him anyways. I think the first and foremost, what you have to look at with him is pretty much what the whole discussion centered around him and what makes him such a prospect is his basketball feel and awareness. I think he's one of the most aware of his what he lacks in ability, and particularly what my number 2 thing is athleticism, and how he can make up for those things. So the second thing, like I mentioned, is the lack of athleticism. I think that comes up quite a bit for him and is what sort of is hindering him from being looked at as sort of a better prospect than he could be, just not being able to recover in certain ways, and rim protect as good a defender as he is. I think that a lack of athleticism really hinders him in certain ways. And then my third concept would be his switchability. I think he's one of the most polished switchable guys in this class. This goes along with his feel and ability. I think he just knows where to put his body in situations that can fill gaps really well in switch situations. And then fourth, I would say, is his footwork. He's really got a great sense of where to put his feet to better position himself to make up for those lack of athletic abilities that he has. So when you're able to do those things, I think the lack of athleticism becomes a little bit overblown just in that sense, because he is able to make up for it so well in terms of where he places himself, knowing that he's going to get beat in certain situations with a lack of foot speed. And then my fifth and final thing would be shooting. That concept, I think, is for some people a concern, but I think that's more of a when you look at it with your eyes, it's a lot different than what the numbers may say in terms of just raw percentages. I think there's a lot of situations where there's enough flashes where he can develop as a shooter to be viable, at least as like a spot up guy. And since he'll be in low usage situations, I think for the majority of his career, that's pretty much the majority of what you're looking at in terms of wanting him, where you want him to be serviceable, is in those spot up situations.
Were you a believer in JRE as a high school prospect, or
was yeah.
How is your opinion of the shooting projection changed with the college data?
I think I am more concerned now than ever in terms of how much closeouts affect him as a shooter. I think that's something that kind of goes along with the athleticism, because if he is not able to attack closeouts like very strongly with that lack of foot speed, and if the closeouts come hard on him and he's not able to shoot over them, and then I think that is sort of where my major concerns lie with him. So that is probably my main concern as far as shooting in how it's changed from high school to college.
I think I was overly positive on the jumper. I mean, like, I feel like he shot. I mean, this is a number of years back, but like, I feel like he shot really well in the IMG Geico run, and that led me to believe. I think he also shot well in UAA, and I was like, oh yeah, like he's gonna go to Villanova. He may not be like a plus guy, but he'll be like, at least versatile. And it's just like, I think it's happening, but it's just happening at a development curve much slower than I had expected. Do you think that's fair, or do you think I'm being revisionist there?
No, I think that's entirely fair, because it just hasn't been at the level I think that you would have hoped to when you factored what he is missing athletically. I think you want the shooting to be a little bit more versatile than it is. So that's a fair assessment, I believe.
Okay, let's dive into this date. Anytime you want to pause, just let me know and I'll run it back.
Yeah. Yeah, so right here, you can see Jared Butler is one of the better, quicker guards, obviously, in college basketball and off-ball movers. But you see where JRE really lacks in foot speed. So that was one of the rare instances where he's out of position to begin with. But he has no recovery tools because his wingspan's only like a 0.75 positive, and then he's not able to react quickly enough to with quick twitch like athleticism to get back and cover Jared Butler in that instance. And then right here you can see on this clip where the shooting is really concerning for me on closeouts, because when he's the defender, I can't really tell right now who that is, but when the defender is coming over to him and closing out hard on him, and he doesn't have the positioning to attack and fit speed to attack that closeout hard, he's going to just settle for the jumper if there's nobody else open. And when he's closed out hard like that, I think that's what the big concern is as far as his shooting.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's another way of saying it. Like, it looks better. It looks like it should go. It looks like it should go without any real concern for closeouts, and it kind of just doesn't. Like, you can tell the release speed is different when it's tight closeouts. You can tell his trigger is different when he's closely guarded, and like, that's the sort of things that make or break shooters at his size.
Yeah. Let's see on this clip. Yeah, so this is a better example to where he knows exactly where that ball is going, and he knows he's not going to shoot or attack on that closeout. This is just a highlight of his feel and awareness, because he's really, in most instances, really well cued into where his teammates are on the floor, and sort of knowing what he's going to do before he does it. And in sort of a guard sense, where guards seem to have that sort of ability, so he knows that he's going to make that secondary pass, the hockey assist, if you will, because he's not going to shoot that clearly. So
yeah, I mean, and I think the best version of him does, the best version of him needs to. It's not that the best version of him does. It's like that is a requirement for reaching like above 60th percentile JRE, I think. And like, if he doesn't ever shoot those, I think that like there's real concerns about how much utility you get from him as an offensive player. Because like at that point, you really have to maximize the rest of your lineup for spacing.
Exactly. Yeah. So and then on this clip, you see he's hanging out in the corner a bit. He sees where the play is developing, and he knows exactly, again, with that feel and awareness, what he's going to do with the ball as soon as he gets it. He's able to see that, there's another secondary cut coming, and he's going to get it to that cut in that open space right there, knowing full and well that he's not going to shoot it. So that just goes to sort of further the feel and awareness case for him.
Yeah, I mean, it's just how valuable is that awareness in a world where he doesn't have shooting, like serious shooting gravity?
Exactly.
That's the $1 million question. Well, it's more than that, but you get what I'm saying. I think this is also like a particularly brutal game because like not for him, like not that he played poorly. It's just like this is one that holds a lot of these questions into like they hold him up to the light. Like there are games where if he doesn't shoot, it's not particularly a problem because of Nova's ability to space and like just their offensive like scheme creativity. And like Baylor doesn't neutralize that, but it's as fair of a playing field as you're kind of going to get. And so like it has moments where I think record scratches normally wouldn't exist. They do in this particular one, and I don't even think he plays like particularly hesitant or poorly. It's just that like those moments are just held into a little brighter light because against Baylor you're probably only going to get one advantage per possession if you get one.
Exactly, yeah. And then you saw in the last clip where he's anticipating where Davion Mitchell is going to go with the ball. He was able to sort of go back and block that off the backboard because despite his athleticism and leaping ability and wingspan, right here, he's able to sort of know exactly, right here where Davion comes. No worries. So you see right here where he knows exactly where Davion's coming, and because he's able to anticipate what he's going to do with the ball while he has it, that's able to sort of mitigate his athleticism, and he's not playing alongside him where a lot of shot blockers are coming over from the opposite end of the wing, in that typical shot block or rim protector role, because he doesn't have that athleticism to do so. But you can see right here where he knows exactly where that ball is going, and times it perfectly in terms of right at the peak, knowing that's pretty much his last opportunity to be able to protect it.
Yeah, and you have to think that NBA athletes, NBA floor spacing, and NBA timing restrictions make that an even larger hurdle to clear.
Yeah. Yeah, and then right here, again, another instance of like his really good passing, gets it right in the shooter's pocket, knows exactly where he wants to catch the ball. And then the strength and rebounding too is another thing where I like obviously how he used it in college, but at the NBA level, without the leaping ability and the wingspan, I wonder how much of that gets mitigated in the NBA, because he's obviously excellent at tracking where the ball is going to come off the rim and positioning himself to get there, but without the athleticism or wingspan, how viable is that is sort of my question.
Yeah, I mean, technicians live a really hard life. If you're like if your pathway to being successful in the NBA is being, if it isn't a tools based argument, it's just like I have to be the best technical rebounder in the league to maintain playoff value. Like that is an extremely difficult hurdle to clear. I mean, we talked about it earlier a little bit with Hauser, but like if you're going to need to retain elite status to make lineups make sense, which I think like for him there is a pathway for, like his pathway as a rebounder is just through like understanding of angles and stuff like that, which I think he has a very good read for, but I think you'd have to level up to, like he gets all these weird little taps and like the energy is high. Like there's a lot of stuff where you're like, that doesn't even normally happen with good rebounders. And it's like, well, how good does that have to be to Jesus to keep playoff value? And the answer is like really, really high.
Yeah, and then you could see here on that clip with Davion where he's doing like a really excellent job of mirroring him, and Davion's obviously one of the more burstier guys in college basketball, and he's able to position his foot placement in ways that he's not right there. You see he gets beat, but he's able to quickly put his foot in a place where that's mitigated a little bit. So he knows that he's going to get beat just pure off of pure foot speed, but he's able to mitigate that in terms of where he puts his feet.
Yeah, I mean, good foot position gets you, but only so far. That's like, I hate that that's the phraseology we've come to, but that's like sort of where I'm landing with JRE, where it's like I just wish that how he's like his passing is predicated on a passing and scoring gravity that I don't necessarily think will exist in the league. Like here, he's getting like three attention of three people. Like, do you think he'll get a double sent at him in the league? And on high post catches, yeah. Like most teams are going to be like, no, like JRE ISO possessions are good for us. Like go crazy, young man. And like he's not creating advantage; he's seizing, defensive mistakes. And I think that like he is one of the guys who, like, if he shoots, is the real question. Like just the flat out, like, you can peg him as a different level of contributor if he shoots. If not, like, it's going to be a much more rough and tumble road.
Yeah, for sure. And then you see in this position where he's here, where again his footwork is really well placed. And then on the last possession, the clip right before that, where he's able to switch and fill that gap really well. And that's sort of the defensive value I think he's going to bring to in whatever context he's in. I think that's always going to be a part of him. But with the rim protection is a little bit scarce, so that's probably the only thing defensively I have concerns about. And then offensively, I think we've pretty much covered that ad nauseum.
Yeah, unfortunately. Okay, questions about JRE. Discussion points about the archetype of guys who are gravity passers but don't generate gravity themselves. Defensive tweeners. Anything that you guys might have that jumps out?
Yeah, I think it was Francis. You can go first.
No. Go ahead. You go.
Okay. So yeah, I would love to be in on Jerry as a prospect. And like you guys kind of hinted and mentioned throughout, like, he's a good positional defender, but don't see him really guarding up and down the lineup too much. And then offensively, he's going to be mostly used a floor spacer and a ball mover, because inside he won't be able to get post ups because no one's going to give him that, and like high post looks. And I don't think he's good enough as a playmaker to be like a short, or he doesn't have the scoring gravity to be a short roll that like PD just said. And then that makes him a floor spacer mainly and ball mover. And I don't know if he ever gets the gravity as a shooter to where teams will really defend him and be able to run him off the line, where he can attack closeouts and use his strength to finish at the rim or make plays to other people. And then you add on to the fact that he's not that quick. It's an avenue where he gets real minutes in the playoffs. But like Stone said, like, the feel is there. He's one of the smartest players in terms of position instincts in the class. But yeah, it's just tough for me to see an impactful outcome for him.
Yeah, and the other thing I would say too is, like you mentioned the attacking of closeouts in the Texas game, I think it was against Kai Jones, where obviously Kai Jones is raw in a lot of aspects. He was able to take advantage of the fact that he's positioned really poorly out on the wing on one play, and he attacks that closeout really hard. So he's smart enough to know like when he's capable of attacking closeouts and when guys are positioned poorly. And when he's able to sort of execute those. So I think in certain instances, it's not a total lost cause, but for the most part, it's going to be a concern, I think. And then as far as the shooting, I think he's 74th percentile in terms of spot-up shooting, which was sort of surprising to me. But I think that's the majority of his shots are going to come that way, right? Like, he's going to be a guy who, like you mentioned, is a ball mover and a floor spacer. And I think there's there's room for optimism in terms of how he can improve in that role.
Yeah, I think my issue with Gary is basically like I feel like he's somebody who's like really good at basketball, but doesn't really have like basketball skills that you can like depend on, which is a weird.
Yeah, he's not a real hooper.
Yeah, it's a weird like it's a weird dilemma where like I think of him like, oh, this guy really understands basketball, but also like, oh, he really doesn't really have skills that he does stuff. Of course, he's like he hits jumpers occasionally. He rebounds and everything like that. But it's like if I told you like what besides just doing smart things sometimes, what does JRE really do? It's hard to come up with a definitive answer. And I think those type of players are really hard to not only just like think about on the team, but like in terms of the team, but like what role they play, but also I think they're very likely to not end up as much as you hope, just because of how at best they're basically like borderline passable in a lot of skills, and that doesn't really shift defenses or offenses in any meaningful way.
Man, Francis gave my scout report to the public.
Yeah, I mean, I really dig JRE, and I think before I asked like, oh, did Bringer go to IMG too early? And I feel like it might be the case with JRE too. Like, I have a similar question: is like if he didn't go to IMG where they just told him to play the right way, but he said he went to some place where he had to figure out more go-tos, because also he'd probably be on a worse team than IMG. Like, would that have been better for his development?
Yeah, and I think a lot of it comes down to what sort of role he's going to be put in. Like, I think the majority of teams realize he's not going to be an offensive creator, right? Like, he's not going to be sort of that guy who, in any sense, creates offense for himself or others. It's a lot of it is ball movement or secondary assists, things like that. So I think maybe that's a part of the reason why he doesn't have a go-to move. He sort of realizes that too, where he's not that sort of guy, and he just wants to play within the role that he's going to be given to the maximum of his ability. And obviously, there's some concerns regarding what he can do to achieve that maximum outcome within that role, but maybe that's a part of it as well.
Yeah, he's somebody I want to succeed, because I feel like if he does succeed, it'll be in a unique way that's be interesting. But it's just hard. It's a harder bet. Like if it adds up like, oh, he makes the shooting leap, then of course that makes it easier. But it's instead like it's hard. It's just a hard bet, unfortunately. I really hope that it works, because he's an interesting player in that way. Like, do you? Not to put you on too much on the spot. Who would you be more optimistic on, JRE or Isaiah Mobley?
Oh man, I mean, for me, JRE. I think just because I am probably stupidly high on him, because I think he really can do the things I mentioned, like at a good enough point to where it is valuable to a team. And I'm not really sure. Like, I think with Isaiah Mobley, it's pretty much like you're just betting on the shooting, right? Like you're betting on the shooting to be like pretty good. So that's pretty much the role he'll be playing. And I think that's where I fall on that.
Yeah, it's understandable.
I think that I would lean JRE, because like there is the format of a player that is both extremely interesting and extremely valuable. It's just getting into like, I think that this might be a 3 or 4 year like realignment project where somebody sits him down and it's like, hey, you have to be a volume 3-point shooter, like a volume 3-point shooter.
Yeah.
Like just maybe it's like Googling Mike Scott's career earnings and then just looking at the number and being like, oh wow, what was his 3-point rate? Okay, yeah, I mean, sure. I think that like JRE obviously presents more ball skills than like somebody like Mike Scott did, but like that archetype has proven to be really valuable even at really low outcomes. And it's hard to not buy in on that. It's just like to buy in on that, you kind of have to already have a specific ticket, which is either the players that are optimized in that circumstance, or the belief that you have the circumstances to do it. Like, I'm gonna keep saying this because I think that it fits a lot of fun places, but like JRE Pelicans, get him with Fred Vinson. Him and Zion would be very fun, and I feel like they cover up some of the. They would complement each other well, and you also don't have to worry about the gravity problem because like Zion is a black hole in the off-ball sense, where like teams are preloading against him, and so Jerry would be able to manipulate that even if he doesn't have zone shooting gravity. So I mean, I think that there's a lot of interesting ways that you could handle that, but that would be a place where like. If you were to task me on draft night, if that were to happen, I'd be like, oh, that's an A or A plus drafting, and just in terms of their allocation of their resources and matching player fit to team optimization.
Yeah, oh, sorry, but I think GRE really needs like the Quinn Grimes push. Like where Quinn Grimes like after by junior year, he looked at this last game and said, all right, I have to be a shooter. I just have to be, and then now he might get in the first round just off that because he changed how people envision them on their teams.
Yeah, and I think there's definitely room for optimism. I think there, right? Like there's nothing about his shot that screams like this isn't developable, and I think that's sort of the case with JRE, where there's enough there that I think he can justify putting enough time and resources into trying to develop it because there's enough flashes throughout the season. And like I said, I think in most cases, it's going to come as just being like a spot up guy in open situations, right? So I think that's well within his capabilities of reaching. And then the other fit I really liked for him too is maybe the Brooklyn Nets, where they have such an offensive heavy load already in terms of the high usage guys, so he's able to sort of come in and fill in a lot of the smaller gaps in terms of defensive switching, playing alongside a guy like Nick Claxton. Even though neither of them are like great rim protectors, both of them are switchable enough to where I think they can play really well alongside each other. And then he's able to just sort of spot up in the corners and things like that while other guys take on the heavier offensive load.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. Or at least, like, if it works, that's a situation where I think it could work.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are circumstances. Like, I think that he is one of the more interesting like situation hunts in this draft. I think Bones is another one. Where you just like there are places if you are willing to really hunt for them. But it's figuring out like I think there are also some like I don't want to say nightmare, but like there are some fits I would really dislike from just like what he needs and what the team can offer. Like it would kind of look like the Wendell Cardle Laurie Markkinen situation, where like neither player is optimized, and also like by not optimizing both, you're damaging their development arcs because they can't even play off synergistic skills.
Yeah, that's entirely fair. That he needs context to where they can, like you said, I think sort of realign sort of certain aspects of his game or certain skills to fully maximize what he can do within a limited role.
Yeah. Any thoughts on anything else? Anything that came to you after you guys presented? Just anything in general for our fifth shift?
Not really. I feel like we covered Jerry pretty well.
Okay. I mean, it could be anything. I mean, you guys didn't use the pause button too much, so if there was anything about your guy or anything like that.
Let me see. I just wanted to mention real quick. I did mention like his ability where he like the way he operates as an athlete. He is it's really hard for him to control. Like basically like slow himself down or change directions and all that kind of stuff. Did I mention that?
Yeah,
Okay, yeah, I just went, and like there was like a clip where he like ended up trying to like stop after he threw a pass or something, and ended up just like slipping and falling and like hitting the stanchion of the basket like feet first.
Yeah.
And like that's like from like outside of like this could lead to scary injury worry, like he's gonna need to work on that a little bit. It's tough for him to work on that just because like it's hard for it's really hard for people that athletic who can get to that kind of top speed and everything like that to decel correctly. But it's going to be important. That's just something I want to point out.
All right. Well, let the people know where they can find your work, everybody. Thank you so much for jumping on one of the night shifts. I appreciate each and every one of you guys for carrying me towards this finish line. My desiccated corpse.
It's like Hacksaw Ridge.
Yeah, you could follow me at report_court on Twitter. And all of my sort of draft work and thoughts are on there. I also host a podcast at Upside Swings where I talk in depth with some of my co-hosts, one of which will be coming on here shortly, about different prospects. And I want to thank PD for having me on. It was a blast. Everything you do is pretty much golden, everything you touch. So it was an honor to be on this.
Yeah, like the little underline thing says, you can follow me on Aneesh Namburi. Work as a scout analyst, whatever you want to call it, at Pro Insight. So check out everything we're doing. And I have a series called The Blueprint, which is a intersection, I guess, of team building, roster construction, and data science from my personal viewpoint. So be sure to check that out. The last couple sections are going to be coming out shortly, but everything else is up. Just wanted to again thank PD for letting us come on the stream. It's been great. Please go support PD, read PD, all that kind of stuff, because the amount of work he puts in is absolutely insane. So yeah.
For me, you can just follow me on Twitter at Ben30 BENTHRIFTY. Yeah, you can follow me if you want. If you, I'm nice, usually. Usually. I don't really have much else to plug. I mean, you go on YouTube and watch the Little Suggs convo that I had with PD.
Yeah, I get a lot of people who are mad at me for not turning that into a full length regular one. Like that's like my most commented one, and being like, "You robbed us. This is really great. I want the breakdowns." And I'm just like, "Sorry, man."
I mean, you went like 3. Yeah, it was almost as long as this marathon.
I think it was longer. Who's to say? All right.
Yeah.
And last,
but yeah, if you want, keep going into the comments section and keep being mad at him.
Yeah, or defend me. I mean, who knows? That might be a better strategy.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to yell at him, say that for every negative comment, give him a subscription. That'll be a fair trade.
Seems like a reasonable trade-off.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, besides that, yeah, just thank you for having me. It's been a lot of fun, and I hope you guys enjoy the next shift.
Yep, and you can find me at easy_hoops on Twitter. I do my writing at premiumhoops.org and also at my own site, easyhoops.co, as well as I think something else that's going to be coming out somewhere else pretty soon here if I can finish it. And then I co-host a podcast with my good pals and fellow analysts from Premium Hoops, Scott Levine and Cody Hodek, called Sense and Scalability. You can find us wherever podcasts are listened to. But yeah, just wanted to echo what everybody else said and thank PD for the Herculean effort that is this marathon stream, for helping everybody kind of get up to speed on everybody who didn't get their own kind of every prospect who didn't get their own personal stream. The marathon is a really great way to catch up. And we actually did a stream already. I was on for the Corey Kispert breakdown, which was a ton of fun. So you can check that out on YouTube as well. But yeah, thanks so much to PD for putting this thing on. It's been a blast to watch, been a blast to be a part of, and PD is a legend in the community.
Yeah, thank you guys for doing this. You took on some extra burden while I was editing some video, and I appreciate you guys adding color commentary while we decided who the best and worst fits were, while I nervously tried to edit video together. If you would like to support me, the subscribing to YouTube is free, and I'm on my way towards monetization, and that would be really important. If you have a couple extra bucks, the Patreon's always free, and the breakdowns will be free flowing now that we are ending this very condensed cycle, and I can spread my wings a little bit and start to write about new ideas. I have some Peach Jam thoughts. I have some team building thoughts. I have some general draft ideas. I don't know. I'm excited to get to writing again. I'll let you guys. I'll let you guys go. I just want to say thank you again. Just thank you so much for what you've done, for dealing with it, for dealing with this incredibly insane idea I had. I don't know why I thought this was a good idea. To do this the day after I get back from a flight where I couldn't work because it was like 2 puddle jumpers back to back. But yeah, thank you guys. Appreciate you. And we're going to jump to the 3 draft.